Which one?
Oh, good. Oh, Brenda. Sorry. Are we like rolling? Okay, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Monday, January 29th, 2024. I do believe we have Zoom available, and anyone in the room that wants to make any comments? Is anyone with a raised hand on Zoom? No one? Okay, all right. And our meeting on Wednesday will be at its regular scheduled time at 9 a.m. So let's go to our first agenda item.
Thank you very much. For the record, I'm Tarek Rawlings, Senior Transportation Planner with the Community Development Department and the County's Road Department. And I'm just going to share my screen really quick here. We have a quick work session item in preparation for a public hearing this Wednesday. So today's a work session for the Redmond Airport Master Plans update. It's a text amendment under file number 247-23-000-252-2A. It's a request to update the airport safety combining zone of the county to align the imaginary surfaces, which we'll get into more detail about, and the noise contour boundaries of that airport with the airport's 2018 master plan. That's the purpose of the actual text amendment. This is an applicant initiated by the city of Redmond. So today we're going to give a bit of background on that application process and the actual text amendment itself, recap some of the public process and the hearings officer's recommendation, all preparing you for this Wednesday, January 31st initial public hearing on this text amendment, and some next steps we'll go over briefly. The record, just as a reminder, is included on the county's project-specific web pages. This one is specific to the file number 252-2A. That's where the whole record lies if you'd like to access that there. So the location is, this is the city of Redmond's Redmond Municipal Airport, also known as Roberts Field. It's owned and operated by the city of Redmond. This is the outline on your screen of the actual properties that support that the airport use, and they are also within the city of Redmond's jurisdiction as well as their zoning districts.
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Oh, maybe this is actually.
Sure. Did you have questions on that?
Yeah.
Very mysterious term of imaginary surfaces. Yeah. So there's these are imaginary surfaces that stem from those airport properties. They are defined by FAA regulations as well as some state provisions. They are essentially the way that Oregon Department of Aviation defines them are on the screen here, but I found a more helpful definition is that they are imaginary surfaces above the ground that are meant to provide pilots and other air operators with notifications if there are obstructions in those above ground imaginary surfaces. Those obstructions are typically other aircraft. Basically, it's a way of trying to navigate around air traffic, trying to have a flow for different air maneuvers like approaching runway maneuvers, as well as transitioning into certain above ground imaginary surfaces. So they're essentially areas above the ground that there could be air movement, air maneuvers in terms of either entering or exiting that airport.
So, well, my question about this is, like, it's helpful to see a map.
Sure.
The plan view, like in three-dimensional space, does this extend upward all the way into the atmosphere, or
yes,
does it kind of have a top?
It does have, it caps out at a certain height threshold. Basically, these, without getting way, we'll get into a lot more of the details in the actual text amendment review, but there are certain slope provisions that are given for a certain area. For example, the approach surface is where someone would gradually, a plane would gradually come into the airport from quite a distance away. The approach surface on the screen here is sometimes 50,000, 80,000 feet away from where that actual runway might be. And so it gives a really gradual slope that's been designed to support commercial aviation, other types of large aircraft, in terms of not being too abrupt of a slope inward, as well as not being too gradual so that it encompasses more private property, impacts more properties out further. But to get to your question, there usually is a slope ratio that's given that says this approach surface begins at the terminus of the runway protection zone and extends at a slope of 40 feet 40 feet vertical, or excuse me, horizontal to 1 foot vertical for the first 20,000 feet. They're very specific in terms of their formula language. And basically that gives you an end point, so the terminus, and usually it's like a northeast, southwest kind of orientation for the Redmond Airport, but that's where those surfaces end, is essentially where they are literally described in terms of their dimensions. And so that's what this update's getting at, is they're slightly changing some of these surfaces, depending on operational characteristics and the large update of that 2018 master plan. And so some of these are being mostly these are being adjusted. There's not huge new surfaces we've never heard of. If you look at the actual text amendment proposed, it's changing some of the elevation, base elevation, some of the dimensions, and some of the slope ratio that we calculate these imaginary surfaces with. So they're just updating the layout of what's proposed in the 2018 plan.
And so this gray area, gray shaded area that's mapped, that encompasses the entire approach area and takeoff area.
Right, any imaginary surfaces, which what this is the county's airport safety combining zone. That's what that actually is for that imagery. But you're exactly right. That image right there includes approach surfaces, transitional surfaces, horizontal, conical, as well as the noise contour boundaries and the runway protection zones. So those are typically the main 5 or so surfaces, including the noise boundary that you see with a given airport.
So that's a layer we can turn on and off and dial.
Absolutely, on dial, it's the AS combining zone or the airport safety combining zone. You're exactly right. And so with this text amendment, while we're changing some of the descriptions, what will happen with this airport safety combining zone mapping feature is it will change slightly based on those dimensions. And so really I'm sorry, if there's any other questions on this slide, we'd be happy to stay here for a moment. Good for now, yeah, and I'm happy to come back if we need anything else. Just in terms of the text that's being altered or proposed to be amended, there's the airport safety combining zone, section 030 is where all these text amendments would lie. This also includes the noise contour boundary, that 50 is referred to as the 55 day-night sound level or 55 DNL noise contour boundary. And that generally is basically anything that's above 55 decibels for day-night level sound levels is something that's considered too loud for residential living, essentially. So anything on the outside of that can kind of live with its own residential design treatments. Anything inside of that noise contour boundary typically has to design so that there's some type of noise dampening for residential activities. And again, this is aligning with the 2018 airport master plan. So the public process so far has been fairly minimal. We've had 2 public comments received. Nothing very substantive, and then with one of them, and then the other was generally oppositional to the entire proposal. There have also been 2 agency comments received. The hearing officer recommended approval on December 15th, and that followed a November 7th public hearing before that hearings officer. And so now we'll, as part of the required second public hearing for this text amendment, there'll be an initial public hearing before the board on Wednesday. We're also, just as kind of an aside, we have the issues with the notice of public hearing, but that's also kind of run alongside our coordination with the applicant to try to get a legal description exhibit for that ordinance, assuming that this gets approved. But so we're trying to still set up some of those exhibits that are a little bit more cumbersome just because of the scope of this zone, the actual map change itself. So we're going to come back with those exhibits as soon as possible, but there will have to be a second continued public hearing, likely in later February, just in case there's any other public input, but at that time is when we'll be presenting those exhibits for you. So it gives us, it's a little more time in this process, but the applicant is fine with the schedule and we're moving forward pretty quickly, and it's really gives us a little more opportunity to get those exhibits ironed out. So that's the only other update I had for you. And happy to answer any questions you might have for me just on this work session item, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
I did find it fascinating that up to 10,000 feet, it was like whatever, 1 ratio, and then it went up above that, to a different, but yeah, I was expecting to see like a 3D diagram or something.
That's real, and I probably will in the PowerPoint. There's a very helpful just FAA diagram that provides a 3D view instead of just
Right.
On the flat. I've heard Will Groves, our really good, planning manager with a lot of very helpful analogies, describes it as it looks like an arena, kind of, like a big stadium, yeah. So usually there's around, you saw those big trapezoid things, those are always kind of the approach runway that looks like, I don't know, some feature of a stadium that extends out of kind of this rounder usually feature, which is the horizontal surface and transitional surface. And for lack of a better term, we compare those to like a baseball stadium, which has been a helpful visual analogy. So I might just bring a quick image like that to the presentation on Wednesday to help with just visually representing those surfaces.
I know it probably would help.
Sure. That's something that would help me get my head around this is, I mean, it doesn't sound like we're going from the existing imaginary surface and noise control boundary to this. It doesn't sound like it's really that much bigger.
No, that's a great question. So what this did affect was 125 specific properties where it either encompassed like the surfaces themselves or the noise contour boundary encompassed more of that property, but they were already present on the property, or they touched a new property. In which case we sent what's called a Measure 56 notice, which is a specific targeted mailing to any affected properties. And so each of those 125 property owners received a specific notice back in, at this point, I think September. And we had no specific responses from any of those property owners. And to be honest, they're mostly all vacant properties, I would say, kind of southeast and south of the airport. And they were all, the vast majority of them already had some amount of that airport safety combining zone affecting those properties and affecting the noise contour boundary as well. And it looks like Will's here.
So in all this change, it didn't take in more properties. It was the same 125 properties, maybe more of those.
Yeah, there were a few in there that had not been in those zones before or had certain of the approach surfaces or other of the specific imaginary surfaces that then affected the new properties. There were a few in there that were like that, but we treated them all the same, that this would be a new provision affecting the potential value of their property, which is what the Measure 56 requires us to put in the wording for that notice. And even with that explicitly called out, we didn't get any phone calls or letters or anything from those property owners. The only public comment is from someone near the Van Airport, really. That was the only and then everything else was an agency comment, or there was one from COIG.
That was the only comment though, wasn't it? And it looked like you sent it out to 20 different agencies.
Yeah.
I mean, I started going like, yeah.
So in addition to that Measure 56 notice, we send to any relevant agency that has anything to do with the airport, any property within the affected area. We sent them notice, and yeah, just got back very minimal agency comments. I'd say the most substantive was from the Oregon Department of Aviation saying we support the proposal.
Great. Any other questions?
I'd like to understand better what it means for these properties to be in these areas.
Sure. I can, I came up special for this.
So I just wanted to help you ground this a little bit. So, the important thing to remember is that there's some slight changes in this existing, and we'll include something similar in the PowerPoint. There's this kind of three-dimensional surface. Most of it is over 150 feet above the ground. And so what that comes down to is if you're looking to construct something that's going to go up through that surface, it can either be precluded or need to be coordinated with the FAA. Because the ground there is overwhelmingly flat and we're not constructing anything 150 feet tall generally, there's almost nothing that comes out. There's, people are in the zone, we ask them what they're going to build. Is it going to be 150 feet tall? No. Okay, go ahead. The other thing is that for people who will be within a noise contour where it's going to be pretty loud in that area, they may be asked to do special acoustic design for their house. And typically residential construction in Central Oregon, because it's designed to keep the houses warm, also keeps them relatively quiet. And usually there's no significant additional expense. And again, each of these things are changing slightly from the existing parameters. So in terms of how property owners would be affected, very, very limited.
And maybe just a quick add on there, the only instance in which those noise contour boundary kind of, noise dampening requirements would be required if they were proposing a new dwelling or a new addition to an existing dwelling. They wouldn't have to retrofit an existing dwelling just because the boundary changed on them. So that's just another point to that one. But Will's very correct. Like the R value we get out of most residential insulation, as long as someone can sign off that that's what's being put in there and it has the added benefit of noise mitigation, and we've seen that as a solution for that noise contour requirement. So while it is a requirement, it's not that we've just kind of through our own analysis, it doesn't seem all that substantive.
So as a side note, I know they extended, I think it's the primary runway so that larger planes can be flying in here when we do have the Cascadia. So what, do you know how much they added to that runway, the 9100?
And in terms of distance, I'm not sure exactly the amount of like additional runway that was added, but they did adjust the base elevation was a really big foundational shift where they changed it was only a matter of feet, but it really changes all the other slopes that stem from that. I would say that was a really big focus of their initial analysis, just on having all those slopes and all that math stem from that initial that primary surface, as they call it. But I didn't look exactly at the distance changes, but really a ton of what I looked at was the surface changes that stemmed from that difference.
Thank you.
Of course.
There was in the memo, there was discussion of a parallel runway. So I thought that meant that there would be a second runway constructed parallel to one of the existing.
That may very well be the case. There's one image I was gonna that just shows a little bit.
It says proposed new parallel runway, 1,000 by
Yeah,
66.
there.
100 feet.
There's one that's just,
These are the existing crossways, and there was a discussion of the potential for
to the south.
So you wouldn't, this isn't trying to account for that.
That is not the proposed surface, correct? Yeah, that's just the existing. That was just a visual to show sort of what
This is the existing.
That's the existing, exactly. I was sorry with that slide. I was mostly trying to explain what an imaginary surface was.
Okay. So the proposed would have like a little additional band.
Slightly change, yeah, and we'll have a good exhibit for you showing the proposed or the existing and proposed for each of those surfaces. They're not all on one view. That's really very difficult to see. But yes, exactly. So there will be a change, but like you'll get one zoning map showing existing and proposed approach surface now, and how that's maybe going to change as well as the runway protection zones and the other surfaces. So maybe that'll be a little bit easier, but I think you're right. There'll be this other sort of corridor for the approach and all those other surfaces that stem from that parallel surface, right? That parallel runway, excuse me.
And so with all that, it's still just the same 125 property center.
Correct, and I honestly think that it was because of that southern runway that it kind of swooped into, like those surfaces kind of grabbed some more of our county properties to the south. That's primarily where all those 125 were then sent out as to. So it's likely because that expanded area.
This doesn't go outside the county boundary.
It does, yeah, so they have to work with Crook County, that portion of their, of those imaginary services as well.
Now I'm seeing it. Oh, yeah, that goes quite a ways outside.
Correct.
Okay, and so that's all being handled at the county.
That's correct, yeah, the applicant's aware that that's in a different county, a different jurisdiction, so I'm not sure exactly what, point they're at with Crook County, but that's something they have to, work independently with that county with.
The chart, what you were saying is that we'll have this hearing, but then we probably will need to have another hearing.
We will have to have another hearing on, and what we tentatively planned for is February 21st, where we're gonna
Okay.
send another notice. It's only to like the 3 or 4 folks that have standing, and so it should be still just the same group. But that'll be, at that time, kind of double benefit. We can get more input, which is always great, but we can also present you with those exhibits, which might be really helpful in seeing like this parsed out zoning changes, but also that legal description for the imaginary services. So those will be available on the 21st as part of that intent.
Anything else?
Very good. Thank you, board, and I see you on Wednesday in a couple of days.
Yes. Thank you. Any other items? Thank you. Mr. Yvonne, do you have anything?
Just thinking ahead, I guess, it's my COIC board meeting Thursday. Looking at kind of finalizing a comprehensive plan, effort that was started, and just kind of put that one to bed, and then all the other things COIC does.
I'll share that there is a wolf livestock depredation compensation and financial assistance advisory committee meeting tonight.
What time is that, sorry? Okay.
And this is the fourth meeting, and this is the one where all of the learning that we have done will hopefully come together in produce a draft application to the state for funding for this the funding cycle that's about to open up. So that'll be due in I believe that application is due sometime in mid-February. So we have time to put some pieces together, broad brush today, and hopefully have more time to refine as needed before the submission deadline. Actually, it might be in March. I can't remember exactly, but we planned for a meeting in late January so that we would have time to rework and further refine whatever needed to be refined. There'll be two parts. One part is the pretty straightforward compensation for depredations that have occurred in the prior year, and the other part will be forward-looking towards what kind of prevention measures can be put in place to reduce the likelihood of depredations in the next year.
Anything else?
So I have my COIC note, but I guess the action item is we interviewed some people for our COIC. So Commissioner Chang, are you interested in proceeding with discussion about appointments right now, or sure? Well, yeah. So this will be the recreation, tourism and recreation. Thank you. Appointment process for the COIC, one of three that we appoint to the COIC board. Two people interviewed today by Commissioner Chang and myself. We did have our interviews just switched back and forth. So I think that both candidates would really bring a lot to the COIC board. Do an excellent job of representing that scope of interests for the community on the COIC board. It's a tough choice on my end. I mean, like I said, I think they both would bring excellent things to the COIC board. I have a slight leaning towards Aaron Schweitzer to serve on the COIC board based on his business experience. He's an effective business business owner, and he demonstrated a real grasp of what COIC does in the community and could be doing. So I appreciate both of those things. And I absolutely appreciate both of them for getting engaged. Good discussions this morning for both of them. Real close call. Both bring lots of industry experience for this specific appointment. So it's really exciting to have them involved. And I slightly go a different way with the other applicant, Christine McConnell. And it really jumped out at me is the connections to the Warm Springs tribes, South Wasco County, Tri-County area, just that she already has that larger footprint experience is what jumped out at me. But I mean, as I say, I agree with everything you said about Aaron also. I mean, talk about a business person, a lot of good history for the last 20-something years. And both of them have good history here in Central Oregon, you know, a good long, back history of, a lot of cycles and seasonality about what we do. So,
What does
does
Christine
anybody
do?
have a coin?
Right.
I don't- We'll see where we go with this. She's Business Central Oregon. She works there, and I see her, Sun River Lapine Economic Development once in a while. She's real involved, but she's got that large kind of footprint vision. As I said, that's kind of the foundational piece they got me thinking, oh, okay, that's a start.
She's currently one of the deputies to
Julia.
Julia Teese.
You know, Aaron mentioned he was, you know, kind of expanding up in Redmond more, but as I say, that it just became the kind of geography footprint, and he's got a lot of experience in Central Oregon, obviously. So, any thoughts on how you want to proceed, Commissioner?
Oh.
And yeah, anybody, I don't
Yeah,
know.
tossing a coin, yes.
Yeah,
But you
Christine
you
with
can
a
make a
K?
deciding vote if you like.
Yeah, that's what I know, because I wrote out Christine with a C, and I'm thinking, oh, let's go with a K. Okay. All right.
so COIC also has a budget, committee seat open this year too. I was just talking to Director Beatty about that, and she said, oh, don't forget, let them both know, whoever gets picked, let the other one know there's an open seat for budget. So it was just, she just said that a couple hours ago. So either way, they can both be on.
Okay. Well,
One of the other things that Christine does at Visit Central Oregon is she manages the future fund.
right. Okay,
So
well,
they would both bring a lot to the board.
so maybe Aaron can go with the budget, and Christine goes with, the regular COIC. That'd be a good, you know, a good utilization of both of them.
So you're offering to kind of adjudicate that close call?
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, yeah, as I say, I'm not real strong about that. It's just a starting point.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. Tammy asked if the board might consider appointing the other members at the same time. Just, I think last year they were appointed sometime in April after the board concluded the interview process. She just thought they were all appointed at the same time because it's a calendar year appointment. So Chris Piper, Jay Patrick's appointment and Jay Patrick. So if the board would, so we would bring all.
So you just want us to wait then?
That's right.
Are you just asking for a motion?
No, not now. We would put it on a board meeting. I think we would put it on a subsequent board meeting, on a consent agenda.
Okay.
A slate of candidates.
What is the seat that Jay Patrick is currently occupying?
It's like employment and
Underemployment.
underemployment.
Yeah,
Maybe, not education, but underemployment.
Yeah.
Something of that nature, yeah.
something solid.
So there's unemployment and,
Yeah.
Or unemployed and underemployed. And
Chris Piper holds the business seat. Is that
It was.
it's like a generic business.
He's working for BBS
And then
now.
the BBS on.
BBS, sorry, yeah.
And then the other appointed seats on the COIC board are forestry and agriculture. Is that correct? Appointed by Crook and Jefferson. That's
I was joking that.
the seat that Crook County gets to appoint might be more appropriate for it to be the data center seat than the timber seat these days. But
Well, and these are just the bylaws from 1972 that we're working by, so those are just the appointed seats. But they all generally kind of fit the right category still. And
So, do I hear that if that's acceptable to the board, then we would put on a slate of candidates for appointment for the 2024 COIC county appointed seats will be Chris Piper, Jay Patrick, and Christine. Is that?
Sure. And then,
McConnell, yeah. That's what I heard. Okay.
and then Aaron wants to do the budget.
well, so we can offer that.
Yeah.
Because that'll be more of a existing board accepting and nominating.
And so are you saying, Nick, that the person appointed to the tourism recreation seat wouldn't become active until for a few months, or they would start now?
They would all start immediately. Tammy just thought of it for consistency to have them all appointed for the 2024. And I guess they're all just 1-year annual appointments. It's just,
Put them on consent at the same time. So when Christine's appointment letter goes on consent, we will have the reappointment letters go with it in a packet. Because it sounds like that's easier for them administratively if that happens. It's a process.
Well, we put a minutes motion together right now, because I'll invite her to the first meeting.
Yeah,
Or this Thursday.
if I was the person who was appointed to that seat, I wouldn't feel like I was legitimate until I got the formal appointment. That's a couple months away, so.
But isn't it
Well,
a
it's just that-
vacancy?
It's a
Aren't we-
vacancy that we're filling, so a minutes motion at this meeting would make it official.
Okay,
Dave shaking his head yes, so. I'm gonna make the next motion now.
Seems logical.
Yeah, you could always go with the minutes motion, that'd be fine.
Okay.
You could also bring it in on Wednesday on an add-on item with
Yeah.
the appointment letter.
Well, how about we put it on minutes today, and then wherever we want to go from there. So, and with that one action item of appointing Christine McConnell to fill the tourism and recreation seat for our COIC board.
is there a second? I guess I'll second it. Any further discussion? Commissioner DeBonne,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
I'll abstain.
and the chair votes yes. And then what about if it's filling the vacancy, then would she need to go to the reappointment then? I mean, is it just finishing the rest of this term and then do we have to have a reappointment?
As I understand it, they're all 1-year appointments in any event, so the board needs to make each of the appointments again. That's what I understood in my conversation with Tammy, but with you, may know better.
I don't have a good sense of that, but I think my understanding is she would serve for a year starting now.
Okay.
So a reappointment would not be necessary. We would just seek reappointments for the
Okay, all right.
And so we could bring those back on maybe for to do the reappointments on Wednesday.
Or schedule them into next week's board meeting, because we're gonna have a meeting this Thursday. After that, anytime in the next month is fine.
Right, okay.
And I did have a call this afternoon from the Sisters Rodeo Committee, and they had mentioned this to me earlier. They have a whole bleacher section that is disintegrating, it's wood, and they're working on getting design and cost going. So I copied Senator Finley on it because Sisters Rodeo Grounds is, I believe, in his district. I think it is. It's across the street from Highway 20. Anyway, he'll let me know, I'm sure, if it's not.
Is it the red section or?
The red section,
or
the
gold
red section. No, the gold section and those sections I think are okay, but they're worried about the cost and the disintegration. So it's not the first time I've heard about it. So, and I sat in that section. I don't want it to fall apart when I'm there. Anyway, thank you, Patty, for calling me, the past president. Anything else today? I don't believe we have anything executive. No? Okay, so meeting adjourned. See you Wednesday morning at 9 a.m.
Oh, yeah, tomorrow. I got that.
Yeah.
Over it, yeah.
Seriously.
Probation.